Texting or talking on the phone?
Woo! Architect's crap on the phone. Well, I'm crap on the phone. If I'm in something and if I get a call, if I break that, it's an hour, half an hour before I can get back into it. So what might seem like a really short time on the phone for someone needing information just becomes a nightmare for me.
What is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch up with people about it.
Hey guys, before we kick off, I just wanted to take a quick second to say thanks to our content partners, Abodo. You probably know Abodo from their feature timbers like cladding, decking, screening, and all those beautiful timbers that make our projects look amazing. Now, on top of all that, Abodo timber is actually grown and manufactured right here in New Zealand. Cheers, Abodo. You guys are actually legends. Now, let's kick off this episode. Jonathan Smith. John Smith. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
Do you prefer one or the other? We had a chat about this before.
It's all good. Either is fine.
Where did you grow up, John? Where did you grow up around Auckland, or?
So I was born in Singapore and then came across to New Zealand when we were quite young, so sort of 2-3 years old. Went to Wellington, straight to Wellington. So we arrived in Wellington on the day Elvis Presley died, which is what
sad.
my mum always says. And spent time in Wellington until I was about 12, and then came up to Auckland. Came up to Auckland the day before I started at Auckland Grammar, so that was pretty hardcore.
Yeah, we were talking before, we're both ex-grammar boys.
Yeah.
So you moved up to Auckland, and then the next day you started at grammar.
Yeah.
What was that like?
There was a lot of tears. Every night there was a lot of tears. It was, I found it really hard because everyone seemed to know everyone at the school, and I was just sitting there going, this is it was a huge school. I was used to a very small school compared to that. And it was a bit sink or swim, so it was an interesting experience. But I think, the education and then the people that I met was, it was incredible. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. It's funny, when I went to Auckland Grammar, we went, because it's like A, B, C, D, E, it's kind of like graded classes. And when I went to grammar, I couldn't speak any English really, because I came from South Africa when I was 15. So I was like in fifth form, 5E,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And I think A and B are like, they're pretty much doing sixth form. So I was really high up apparently. I was like, I'm on E, like, that's crap. They're like, no, you're really good. That's good, right? And then I couldn't speak in English. I was doing like biology and stuff like that, and all these weird, classes that I had to understand English, right? And so I went from like 5E to 6F.
Right, yeah.
So that's like 11, N.
Right, wow, yeah.
So it was 11 class drop.
Yes, yeah.
And then I only had to be there for like a half a year to realize I can't stay here. Like, this is on the road to nowhere. You know what I mean? Even the way we were treated.
Yeah.
So then I went back to like work really hard. Went back to like 7F. So went from E to N to F. So
you came over when you were in fifth form?
Fifth form.
And so you spoke Afrikaans?
Mostly spoke Afrikaans, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit through movies and stuff, could understand it, but couldn't really hold a conversation.
That's
so I thought
incredible.
Well, firstly, I thought when I moved to New Zealand, I thought I'd be a bit of a celebrity. I'm like, I'm from South Africa, they'll love me in New Zealand, right? Not knowing like all
We've
the
all seen the
background
Power
and
of
the history of 1987, like rugby tour, like they pretty much think all South Africans are racist, So I get here and I'm like, I'm going to be a bit of a celebrity, I get here. Immediately, everyone hated me. So then I was like, okay, well, maybe they hate me because of my accent. So what I'll do is I'll introduce myself as, I'll be like, hi, I'm Brad from South Africa. Because that way they'll know I'm from South Africa, and that's why my accent's a little bit strange and I can't speak well, and then they'll accept me. And it's like, so then after a week of that, everyone's like, oh, hi, Brad from South Africa. Hi, Brad from South Africa. And I was like, okay, that didn't work. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, it takes, it is a bit hard when you come from a small school to go to a school of like, 2,500 boys or whatever.
But at least I spoke English. So that's,
you
did well. I mean, it's interesting. One of, my best mate is Shane Pina. So he came from Natal, and he came over in a third form, did the same thing. But yeah, it's a bit of an interesting ride, isn't it?
Yeah. So what kind of kid were you in like high school?
Probably just wanted to do well and make sure I was doing well at school. Probably my parents thought I was. What do you? Can I swear on this?
Yeah. Go for it.
So they probably thought I was a little shit, but still wanted to do well at school and get that affirmation that you're doing well and. Made some great friends, and we got up to usual stuff that you do as young men. Good. Just enjoyed lots of sport. Loved cricket. Played soccer, and was heavily into art. So really enjoyed art.
Yeah, that's cool because I was never really made aware that you could do really art and woodwork and stuff like that because my parents just pushed me into the sciences and the maths and because they did one of those tests, those tests that you do where they like tell you what you're good at, but like I don't know, somehow the results came out wacky because it put me into like physics and chemistry and calculus and stuff, and I'm like, I'm not enjoying any of this.
No way.
I remember one time one guy was like, "Oh, I do woodwork." I was like, "What?" Like as a subject, he's like, yeah, I do woodwork. I'm like, what? I couldn't believe it. Yeah,
well, I was probably lucky. I have an older brother, so he probably got the brunt of everything from mum and dad, and then I did art at grammar, and no one did art at grammar when I was there in seventh form. We just left to our own devices. I remember coming into the art class and. Two guys were, staple gunning themselves. That was fun, and so you just got to do your thing. But
so art is was kind of like your background into before you thought about architecture. It kind of started more on the art side.
I probably went into architecture earlier than that. My grandfather was a huge influence to me. He was a builder in England, and he was also a fireman, so he's a superhero. And he was always telling me stories about his life and building. And so when I was about, I think 9, I wanted to be an architect. And it's probably from him subconsciously hypnotizing me. But that's where it came from.
Wow. So as a 9-year-old, so what, you started like just drawing like houses and things like that? What did you?
Wasn't even. I probably didn't even know what an architect was. But I just told everyone I was going to be an architect, and I just stayed with it. And I remember sort of 5th form, I started to go towards the subjects that I was meant to, so math and science and that sort of thing. Went from there.
Okay, so you then after school, I assume you finished like 7th form and got university entrance and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't, by the way, Jen. I didn't get into uni
to
do a bridge courses and stuff. So you then, how did that start? So you go to university. How did it work back then, or in Auckland?
So I went straight to university, which is probably something I should have thought about a bit more. So I was, I had the opportunity. I got university entrance or the bursary in 6th form, so I could have gone in 6th form.
You were smart.
I did well in tests, and then my best mate at the time, he said, "Yeah, sweet, let's go." So he went and started his life, and I always remember being in 7th form, and he was, he bought a car, he had a job, and I was thinking, that looks pretty good actually. What the hell am I doing? But I just used that 7th form year. I did the play Romeo and Juliet. I was dead body number 4 and the photographer in the play, so that was great. And then just got into the art and had a bit of a chill out year. Then went to university, but I should have done my OE. I should have gone and worked overseas on reflection. But then I just went boom, boom, boom. Got my first real job and went straight into the registration process for becoming an architect.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I was talking to you before about my wife, who's a registered, or who's a I call her architect all the time, and she gets all annoyed. She's like, "You have to call me a graduate architect because she hasn't done the."
She's been through it.
She's not registered.
Been hammered down.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, everyone would just call you an architect. This isn't your little circle, you know. And she's like, no, graduate architect. I don't want people to think I'm, past my registration. So I told you how I got like drunk the night before she was supposed to do her registration, and then she couldn't go through the run through with me, and then she didn't quite make it. So sorry about that, Megan. But and then I gave her 4 children, and now she's definitely not getting registered anytime soon. So 10% of that's my fault, I guess.
Yeah, you were there, so
yeah. So once again, I digress. So then you got worked for your first practice. So what was that like? So what was it like walking into your first practice, first day?
Oh, yeah, it's an interesting process. Auckland, so you can go to either AUT or Auckland at the time. That's all that was the options to go through university. And so I went to Auckland, which taught you how to think, how to research, and a lot of, I suppose, deep thought and idea thinking. And then you go to practice, and you're asked to, that's a garage refurbishment, and you have to look at that, and that's your project. So you really you're grounded immediately, and then I had some bad experiences and I had some good experiences. Some, we're talking before about organisation within an architectural practice and what that means. And small practice has to do so much, so you don't always get the mentorship that perhaps you need as a young person. And so you just have to pick up a lot, and you have to, it's trial by fire sometimes. So I probably went through about 3 different firms, and until I got the experience that I needed for the registration. When I did my first registration exam, I had no idea what I was doing, so I didn't pass that. The second one, I just probably overdid it, so I probably knew more than like you do. But that went well. Got my registration, and day after that, I just started my own business and went from there.
Wow! So you're just like, I'm registered. I'm out of here. I'm going to start my own practice.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then how did you get your first project? Did you have something lined up, family member?
No, that's such a good question, because I was again, I had no idea, and if I had contacts, and if I had those jobs lined up, that's when you should have gone into business by yourself. But I had none of that. So I think what I did is I put a lot of time and effort into thinking, how do you actually get clients? What do you do? So the way that I did it is to do our own renovation to our villa, and back in the day you could do that. And I'd bought a villa with a friend of mine, we talked about it together, did it up, and it actually got onto a old program called Homefront. And so I was interviewed on TV, got national TV, and the next day I got about 27 phone calls, and 1 or 2 of them actually turned into genuine clients, and went from there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So did you get it on there? Did you use like someone to get it on there, or was it just by chance that they were?
I don't even know. I think part of that process of trying to get clients was thinking about all avenues. So one of those avenues turned into ringing TV programs. They didn't have social media back there, so it was. I remember going to a lecture series from the NZIA, our institute, and the architect there was a very successful Australian architect, and he said, just do mail drops, around houses that are for sale, because the people that buy that house probably want to do a renovation. So I'd do mail drops, I'd go out and do everything, I'd ring people, cold call, horrible experience. But that, for some reason, I think that worked, and maybe, maybe they were desperate for projects, that program. So that worked out. Yeah, it was just luck, I think.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
So from early on, you're already aware of like you need some exposure, you need to get your name out there. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of forward thinking, like pre-social media. Like I need to get, maybe get on a TV show and then that will get some exposure. That's kind of cool.
It was cool. It was brown trouser time for me. I just had never. It's like this, camera and people interviewing you. I think, I think it's still out there somewhere. So
yeah,
burn all copies. But
we need to go find that one and get it out there. So what was kind of like your biggest? So you got some work. It sounds like you through your determination, you got some work from that earlier on. So what was your biggest sort of challenges then with starting your own practice back then?
The biggest challenge is always getting enough work to sustain a business, an actual business. I remember going to get a business mentor for free. There's a process you can go through. And I was still working in the front room of the villa, and the guy sort of was really blunt with me and told me, you think you've got a business, but you don't have anything. You've got nothing. Start again, sort of thing. And so that was a wake-up call for me, and I realised, my wife, she's always had a employed job, and so she's really supported me throughout. And so I was able to take a bit more time and go back and look at these things. And those two projects turned into several more. And I think one of the things that got us traction was that we did start winning a few awards, and we became a little bit more well-known. It's very hard to penetrate the public awareness and the ether that's out there, because you have the established architecture practices and the firms, and there's a lot of trust in that. So part of the process for a young practice is to build that trust, especially if you don't have those ongoing contacts and that sort of thing. So.
How important is it to get like awards these days? And as an architect, is it like really important?
I think it comes down to where you're coming from and what you're trying to achieve. I think it helps your own. We're talking before about getting, doing well at school and getting that affirmation. Sort of gives you that affirmation that what you're doing is being applauded by your peers and people that are respecting your work. So that's great. I'm not sure how it reflects within the public. Again, that idea of what the name of architect actually means. I'm not sure if that's even sort of out there in the social ether, whether people understand that.
Yeah.
So whether it's an architecture award or whether it's a designer award or award, people can make their own judgment on whether they like the work or not. And I think that's probably the most important thing. But the awards is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess each architect has their own style, and kind of that will come into play as well. And so we'll talk a little bit. I want to talk a bit about your firm and kind of like what sets Matter Architects apart, and how you guys sort of like have your own, maybe unique approach. But let's talk a little bit just about architecture in New Zealand. Like, New Zealand architecture seems to be world class. When I'm talking, because I work with my other business, Grow, we work with a lot of builders in Australia, and we talk to people overseas, right? And people always have really good things to say about New Zealand architecture. Why is that? What makes New Zealand so, I wouldn't say cutting edge, or why are they so well regarded around the world in terms of our architecture and how we approach it?
That's a good question. I think I would agree with it, just because there are so many talented architects out there. The designs that are coming through now, especially younger firms, is mind blowing. It's really pushing the boundaries. Perhaps it's because of how New Zealand's developed as a country. It's quite young. It still doesn't have as many shackles as some other countries. there is land available for design. We're not just, they're not just already developed cities that we're sort of inheriting these characteristics that we have to grow with. We're sort of coming from new ideas. We've always maybe previously had to be quite innovative in terms of the way we approach things because potentially there hasn't been the budget. Nowadays it seems the reverse because everything costs so much to do, and we should be a source of our own inspiration. And I feel that the architecture in New Zealand is incredible. Sometimes it's a bit of a shame that we don't have more both domestic and international competition where people see that, the people in power that are creating projects around New Zealand and building things. Sometimes it goes to overseas architects, and that's great and that's fine, but we've got such a bulk of talent here that is cool. So it's good to hear.
Yeah, and how would you describe New Zealand's sort of architecture style? Because I'll just preface this that I think I like beautiful design.
Yeah.
And I can walk into a well-designed home and be like, I like that. I like how I feel in here, but I can't always pinpoint why I like it or why, it's done in a certain way. So in terms of New Zealand style, like to the layman like myself, how would you describe it?
I'll probably only be able to, speak about how we approach it, and it's contextual. So when we have a project, we will always talk to the client, but the site's equally as important, and you get that inspiration from the site and how you're going to do things, and that's not just the overall aesthetic and form. That's also the materials and the textures and the tactile qualities, and so maybe we're hopefully we're more sympathetic and we're more contextual in the way we approach things. I mean, our landscape is so beautiful that we should do that. So hopefully that's something that people sort of can relate to and see.
Yeah, because I'm wondering why so many of New Zealand's why they design so many of them black. You know what I mean? Because I was like, why is we all like the black style, right?
Yeah.
But why is there so much black? And then someone explained it. I can't remember if someone explained to me, or I just noticed somewhere like all our forests or whatever you call it, it's kind of like they're more black than they are brown, right? So in Australia, everything's kind of brown and beige and stuff, and with a little bit of green.
Yeah.
We're here, it's kind of black. Even the ferns and stuff, it's got a black trunk.
Yes.
With the green.
Yeah.
And so it sort of fits a black home probably fits nicer in our.
Definitely, yeah.
Is that right? Or is
Yep, and architects love black. We, there's the Saab, there's the turtleneck, it's all there.
why do you guys wear black all the time?
We just like to fade away. That's it. I don't know. It's if you ever see a group of guys out as architects, at the moment there's a uniform, and it's usually a black t-shirt with a suit top and those black sneakers with the white soles, and it's all there. But black is, that lovely. It does fade, and it sounds a little bit. I don't know. It does. It goes into the background, as you say, the nature of New Zealand can be quite brutal almost. The forests and the black sand shores and all of that sort of thing it's not like a lovely sort of white sandy beach that you stroll down, and so black does tend to just it just sort of fades into the background, which is I think that's how I see it.
Yeah. And where do you see sort of the state of the New Zealand architecture industry at the moment? Do you feel like it's just getting better? Are we sort of like at a stalemate because of because I'm just talking about the mid-market now, not the upper end. But are we a little bit at a stalemate because everything's getting so expensive? So you're constantly like fighting with cost versus design. Like, how do you sort of see things moving forward? Yeah,
it's a really interesting time. I feel as if it's getting to a point where it has to change. Something has to change in how we're doing things, and whether that's more prefabricated. I just saw this morning there's a 3D printed house now that's modular. Whether it's efficiencies on site and how materials are sourced, I feel like it's getting so hard to do anything that's going to be the catalyst to make something change. And I feel like we're in a very good place in terms of our architecture. There's so many young firms, as I said before, coming through. They're just incredible ideas, incredible ways of approaching things, and they still haven't been, siloed into the way they think. They're creating houses that don't look like houses. They're more sculptural. They're beautiful. But yeah, the cost being so prohibitive, and this is why travel's quite important for everyone, but especially in the building industry, because you go overseas and you see what can be done, and the variety of what is being done for a far smaller budget in many cases. And so then you come back here, and there has to be something that we can do. And perhaps that's the next stage the architects should be looking at, is what we can do and what we can offer the industry in that way.
Yeah. What are some cost-effective designs then out there? Because I mean, obviously you can go break it completely, the mold, and do, like you say, just do more of the built off-site type homes and ship it in. It could be more expensive, but outside of going so extreme, what are some other sort of design aspects that you've kind of utilized that could be a bit more cost-effective for homes, bring the cost down a bit, but still gives you that sort of architectural flair, if you understand what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We like to look at materials in different ways. So say you've got a modest brick, you can use a brick, which is a really cost-effective material, use it in a different way, but making sure that it can be built very easily as well, because I think a huge aspect of those potential savings can be the efficiencies on site. Much like small architecture practices, small business builder practices are the same. They're dealing with everything. How to run the business, how to look after the team, and then what the next project's going to be. So there's a lot of one-off mentality sometimes, and so get those efficiencies on site working well. Get the materials hopefully a little bit less expensive. But it does come down to sometimes that experience of when is a good time to push, and when is not a good time to push, because sometimes there could be the best concept, best form, best aesthetic solution, and then you've just got to look at it and think, what the hell am I thinking? Just listen to the budget, listen to the client, listen to everyone involved, and just step back and think carefully about what is going to work in all those aspects.
Yeah, because sometimes you have to really think outside the box, because sometimes just switching out a building material or cladding or something could be like a bit of a fart in the wind in terms of the budget, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can bring that down. That will save you 30 grand. It's like, yeah, okay, well, we're like 1.5 over budget. So there's that's definitely one of the challenges out there, right? And I think people also have expensive taste. Because people don't know. So a client looking to build a home, they might have like a really fancy job, good household income, and they go, our budget's 1.8, and then they have an idea in their head of what they can build with that, and then they kind of soon realize that it's not going to be that crazy. It's going to be pretty basic what you could put together, especially if you want a big floor plate.
Yeah, and you said it straight away. A big floor plate, I think, is. That many of our conversations are around the size of the house versus what you want and what you need and what that means. I mean, I think the average house in New Zealand's grown by 40 square meters over the last 20 years, and what we're seeing a lot at the moment as well is that a double garage is always a preference and part of the brief, but more often than not, it becomes a storage area within the home. And they'll park outside, so it's we just have more stuff, and we want more space. So part of those potential cost-saving challenges is actually working through that brief, working with the client on what is actually necessary, and then referencing that against what that will cost. Taking them through projects, getting a builder or a contractor involved very early on in the piece to give some real feedback and advice on that. So yeah, you're right. The idea of switching out a material, 30 grand used to be so much in a budget, and nowadays, as you say, it's quite it's a small investment. So
yeah. So it seems to me, just from my limited involvement with my own building business that I'm still just involved in to an extent, but it seems to me that the process of getting the home designed, built, is sort of a little bit broken or a little bit backwards, you know what I mean? And you can give me some feedback on whether you think I'm correct here, John, but if you look at the NZIA's sort of guidelines or the way that they recommend architects do this, right? They, from what I understand, is they recommend that the architect work with the client. They go through the design phase, start drawing the plans, and then they get to a point where they go, okay, cool. Then you go out, keep builders sort of at arm's length, but then go out to 3 builders, so to speak, get them to put their quotes in, and then you compare those quotes with the client. You can kind of guide them to who the best builder may be, and then sort of generally pick the cheapest one, or or the middle one, whatever. I don't know what the theory is there.
Yeah.
And then the builder comes, and then based on that, they may all price it up over budget, and then you kind of have to go and do reworks again.
Yeah.
And then the builder still kept the arm's length. The architect work with the client. They rework it. They come back still a little bit over budget. Go back, and it just seems so like just seems convoluted. It just seems make more sense if you chose a builder on competence first, bring them in. I know that NZIA almost advise you guys against doing that because it may seem like you're preferring a builder. But I think that's a much better way of doing it. Get the builder involved early with their practical input, help you design it to budget as the architect, and then work in with the client, and then you can kind of work towards that budget. And it just seems like there's a high chance it's going to go ahead. There's a high chance it's going to go a lot faster. There's a lot more holding cost on land and things like that, and it will help everyone. The architects will probably get more projects built, which is what they want.
Yeah.
Be devil's advocate or tell me why I'm wrong here, John.
No, I think if you're an outcome-based practice, we've always wanted to be an outcome-based practice, you do everything that you can to get that outcome. I mean, you want to see something built. That's the whole, helping people with architecture is why I'm in the business. So I think, that it's theory versus practice, isn't it? Because, as you say, Jeepers Creepers, the way that we're taught to do things is not always correct. And from many years ago, we have always wanted to build relationships with builders and have them involved as early as possible. And whether that be from our own relationships that we've built over time, or whether the client has that builder. And I think New Zealand is a little bit, it understands the building process a lot more, because, again, when I was first starting my practice, we would get referrals from builders rather than, people referring to us as architects. So I think in New Zealand, the builder is almost still... in my eyes, seen as very important, if not the most important part of the building process, or the home process. So yeah, I would totally agree with you. So I can't be
Yeah, yeah. It just seems. I mean, it just seems like the industry is set up that it's very architect led. And I guess if you're the architect and you're working in that sort of mid to upper end like that, it's great because you can control the process.
Yes, yeah.
End to end, and that's great.
Yeah.
It just doesn't always seem to me, and I know that's the game that needs to be played as well by the builders, rather than them trying to get in too early. But I just don't think it's the best outcome for the client necessarily doing it that way, you know?
Do you think if it was more that collaborative approach and everyone was involved and there wasn't such a, as you say, that blind testing, and I mean the way that you're talking about it always is going to come down to cost in some way, and if there wasn't that, I feel as if that would be a far more cost-effective way of doing it as well.
Yeah, but I think there's a hierarchy. I think it's like still a way of where the architect still gets seen as the consultant, professional, works in the office.
Yeah.
And the builder gets sometimes seen as the guy that swings the hammer, you know what I mean? And sometimes it could be, well, who am I going to take my advice from? Because I know even with Harper, my business that I own with Johnny, we would educate the client on why it's important to get the builder involved early.
Yeah.
And obviously would sing the praise of the architect because the architect's what's going to make it amazing, right? But get the builder involved early, just from those practical aspects, like maybe do the foundations more like this rather than that, because that's going to cut away, 30% of the foundation costs. It's things like that.
Yes.
Sort of the practical aspect of it, not the design necessarily. And then the client would be like just fizzing on board, I understand.
Yeah.
And then they go see the architect, and then like they stop like returning your calls after they talk to the architect. And you're like, oh, okay. So the architect said, no, do it more this way. And then, so I do understand that from both parties' point of view, you know what I mean? I just think that the more collaboration there is, the best
Absolutely.
outcome.
Yeah, it's always going to be better. And I feel like, there's, I mean, even the way that our contracts are created from our institute, the amount of administration that is created through that process on site is sometimes practically impossible and very hard. But I probably shouldn't speak to him, over this, but because there are far bigger brains that have gone through that process. They've got the experience, and that's the way they've chosen to do it. So there's always a reason for it. And
for sure.
There is that protection as well. But I totally agree. Having everyone round a table as soon as possible is the best way forward.
Yeah, 100%. So in terms of where you're at the moment then, John, in terms of your pipeline, I feel like architects are probably like a solid year, at least a year, probably 2 years ahead of the client journey than when the builder gets involved and the subbies and all that, right? So how's your pipeline looking out there? What's the New Zealand, Auckland market? I know you work outside of Auckland as well. In terms of, is the pipeline full out there? Is it sort of struggling? Like, what's it looking at like out there from your point of view?
We have still got so much previous work to get through, so we'll be going till maybe the beginning of next year to middle of next year, just with the current workload. What we've noticed is that the inquiry we would get, even at the start of this year till a couple of months ago, we were getting inquiry about maybe 2-3 a week, which has completely died down. And that to us is just a sign, the canary in the cage, where we're probably seeing people right at the edge, and perhaps there's a little bit of waiting. But I would suggest there's a lot of pain out there for a lot of people at the moment. And it's, everyone's just getting by, I think. So
yeah. And how are you pivoting anything at all in terms of to counteract that, or are you sort of just going, I've got enough in the pipeline and?
We always reflect and look at what we're doing, what we can do, and what we can try and do. There's a few. My wife is a professor at the university, and she does research, and her research is a lot of it's to do with the built environment. And there's some lovely sort of cross-pollination there, and We always chat about things, and part of her role, that research role, is that she opens my eyes to many things, which is fantastic. So, I go through that process sometimes, thinking about the future and planning. And because of where I started the practice, I've got that continual worry about, will we have enough work? When is that running out? What do we need to do to get the next project? And so always thinking about that, always looking at what we can do and how we can benefit the industry. I mean, one of the most inspirational things I've done recently is I was looking after my parents. We went overseas to see family, and I went to a science industry museum, and it was just incredible. Just the advances in sustainable forms and building techniques and materials was just absolutely fantastic. So I want to spend a bit of time looking at that and seeing where that leads.
Yeah, because I remember when Ross Bannon was on, the concretologist.
Yes.
Shout out to Ross. He went overseas. He went to Europe and he came back and then implemented a lot of what he learned there in terms of the concrete in here. And I think that kind of innovation and what you're talking about, just kind of being open-minded, not being so stuck in our ways, I think would be very beneficial, especially for New Zealand.
Yeah, it's we're pretty small on the world radar, but we pack a punch. We're amazing at what we do, tend to be. But there's also that the flip side of that, and we don't need to invent how to do something over and over again. And it's always nice to see how other people do things and how other people do things very successfully, and then adapting that contextually to where we are and how this country works. Okay,
so in terms of your practice, first we need to cover a few terms, okay? Because my wife and I, we like to use terms. Here are my favourite ones.
Yeah.
Juxtaposition.
Yes.
That's a great term, right?
Yeah.
You have to use restraint.
Yes.
That's a good term.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some other good terms out there? Architecture terms.
I didn't realise it, but I would use negative detail a lot with
love that one.
Yeah, specific client, and they will never let me forget it. They just everything's negative detail. So that's one. I think.
I'm hitting a blank now because there's definitely 10 more that I can think of.
I think we always tend to talk about the honesty of materials. We want to see the robust, tactile nature of that sort of material. But it's all coming from a good place,
Yeah, of course. Yeah. What are your thoughts on, how like you have architects, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of have like the volume builders, and they come and they take like an aspect of it, and then they can incorporate it, to kind of, I guess, it comes from a good place as well. Wanting to take architectural design and bring it to affordable offering. But what are your thoughts on like, they do like the horizontal and vertical, like what do you call it? Timber boards, like when it's sort of
the weatherboards.
Where they create the juxtaposition between the timber, the horizontal and vertical. Do you think that's a yes or a no?
For me, that's no. But I would, it's what. Again, it's what you're up to. I mean, sometimes you'll drive past a house and it's got about 15 different claddings on the front, and that could look like a dog's breakfast. But you could also take inspiration from that and say, architects get a lot of samples from a lot of different suppliers. So maybe they just used all the samples on one project, and and went from there. But it's for me that just screams. Complexity and junctions and weatherproofing. I mean, how the hell do they? So I'm not. That doesn't float my boat at all.
So you think that once a while back there was people dropped samples off and people just said yes.
yes, I'll do that one. Yes,
I'll do all of it.
That looks good. That looks good too.
And then what about the what's that rock they use down in Queenstown?
The schist.
The schist. Yeah. What are your thoughts of the you drive through a sort of a medium, Milldale, like a normal housing development, and there's the old schist couple of schist pillars and things like that. Is that a yes or a no?
Whereabouts are they?
So like just in like a generic housing development.
In Queenstown or in Auckland?
No, here in Auckland.
I think you're sort of taking a material. We talked about context before. You're sort of taking a material out of context and using it in a way that is a little bit unnatural. So for me, people love stone. They love that feeling of stone, and they want it. But we would probably steer away from that and just go,
right.
Well, it's not.
But it looks fancy though.
It's fancy pants, prestigious.
I'm just trying to get into all this architect stuff. I'm just trying to be one of you guys. Okay, so builders want to work with architects. Like it's like the golden ticket for a builder to find an architect that loves a builder. Yeah, and it's never-ending work. If they chase a client, they might only do one home, and maybe 10 years, 15 years later, they may do another home, and that's it. Yes. They build a good relationship with the architect. There could be like 20 projects coming out of that. If you were a builder today, how would you approach an architect, and how do you feel? What's the best way to kind of get on their radar?
It's probably just going to be a long process, so it'll take a couple of years, and it's just that same thing. It's the trust thing. It's like one of those. You only really get to know someone if you work with them, and it's getting that opportunity, because obviously when you're taking on a new project, you've got a client that has these expectations, and they've trusted you enough to do something with you. And so when you're, leaning on someone like a builder to help get that outcome, that's a huge sort of trust in itself. So for us, it's, the relationships we've had for as long as we can, and we just build and build and build. And we've gotten to know those people both through your previous work, but also just hanging out, going and having a look at their projects. We would probably prefer maybe, depending on the project and typology of the project, whether it's commercial housing or one home, each would probably select different builders for, different strokes, different folks, that sort of thing. So it's all about going through the work, talking to the builder about, why they did certain things, having a look at the quality. So just get the architect to do that. But I feel like, it's such an interesting thing that you were saying, because for me it's always been, and perhaps it's the way I've come through with my business, but I've always felt like it's getting to know the builders and getting them to refer me to because they tend to be the ones that the clients approach first. But maybe that's a progression of your business, because nowadays you're probably right, the clients do come to us rather than through a builder, so it's a bit of a balance, and maybe that's time in the market and age and hierarchy, and maybe it's budget related as well. I don't know.
Yeah. And so is there sort of an example that you can think of how a builder maybe approached you and that was kind of like a good way of doing it?
So we work with some guys at the moment, and really it was more just it felt like a catch up and a chat, and just a really, we talked a little bit about one of the guys on your previous podcast and how there's never a problem. There's a opportunity to look at a challenging solution, and it's getting through those and trying to get the mindset and find out how people are going to perform in different ways, because site is stressful enough. You don't want to have any more stress on site, so you just want really collaborative people that just want to create the best outcome, because if you create the best outcome, everyone's going to win at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And has there been any funny or terrible ways that builders have reached out to you that you're just like, mate, the way you just reached out to me?
I don't think. We get. The client inquiries tailed off, but I get about 3 builders a week now, having can I come and have a coffee? And it's great, you know, you get to meet different people, see where they're placed in the industry. I think we got a cake once from a building practice, and that was amazing.
That left a little of an imprint.
Yeah, that left an imprint, and it was delicious. But I just thought, far out, that must have cost a bomb if you're sending that to all of them. But no, it's always it's always a good sort of, let's go and have a coffee, have a chat, see where you are.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Because I guess builders are always kind of figuring out how can I get on an architect's radar. And so there's no thing that they could do like, there's not like a carrot where they could be like, hey, if you ever work on a project and you're looking to get a practical input, I'm more than happy to just, you know, provide some input. Or would that be too like upfront?
That's an interesting one, because that is real value, and that's a lovely thing to offer. We've actually recently had someone reach out and suggest exactly that, give some early input, some early pricing, even on concepts and that sort of thing. So we would definitely find that useful. What I worry about there is the respect and the value of that work, because to me that is incredibly value, and you always want to value people's time. So you've just got to be careful about how much you give and take. If you're ending up doing that all the time, you're gonna put yourself in an early grave, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that mutual respect will sort of slowly evolve out of conversations and chats.
Yeah, for sure. And so what do you think is the best way, and we'll kind of go, I just want to get a little bit of your point of view, and we've got a few other fun sort of mental health type questions as well. But what do you think is the best way to run a project? Like, what contract do you use? Who's in charge? Client communication, and obviously there's different levels. You know, you can get like a $40 million project versus a $500K reno or whatever, right? But say if you kind of go, $1.5 million build, like what's the best way to kind of manage that, do you think? Like,
so 1.5 used to be, this is it. And nowadays you just have to be careful with everything. And so personally, speaking just very informally and for no one to ever take my advice, it's about getting a builder who you trust, and they're gonna look after that project for you. Ideally, we would have input on site, so we would come and make sure that things are going to plan, and that overall aesthetic is still being maintained and everyone's happy. And then the client to have heavy, if it's a home, a client to have heavy involvement as well. If the client's not invested in every way, it can be one of those things that you you put your heart and soul into every project, and that sort of you need that investment from the client because you're doing it for them, and if they're sort of it just feels strange if they're not part of that process. And then if the builder is the same, they're invested. Everyone wants the best. It's just that team environment. So if there is issues and worries about budgets, that's the time maybe you get a independent QS to oversee things, or potentially we can administer the contract. If you start getting into project management, things become very formal, and a huge amount of that budget can be spent on things that aren't necessarily going to be seen in that end investment or the end outcome, which I don't feel like that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. If you look back now at, and I think that's a good answer, good way of approaching it. If you're looking back at your business now, like you've run a really successful practice, and like you've won a bunch of awards. You have to do quite a few scrolls to get through all the awards on your website.
Just use very large font.
Yeah,
and you just have to go.
It's like 1, 2. No, there's a lot of them. And so, like, looking back now, you know, in the rearview mirror, you know, is there anything you would have done differently in terms of how you've run your business or started your business that you would, you know, if you had to like go back again?
Probably let go a lot earlier. You know, architects tend to be quite detail-oriented and focused. And if something doesn't quite go to plan, it can be devastating. And you, at some point, have to let that go anyway. And when I say let go, I don't mean let go of the quality. I mean let go of the things that aren't proportionally important. And that's just for your own mental health as much as for the benefit of the project. So that would be something I'd do a lot earlier. And then you just have to have luck on the way, because the people I have met and are part of the team matter. I've just been incredibly lucky with, they're just, you know, just fantastic people. And you can't choose that. That's just happened. And yeah, they're friends for life sort of thing. And everyone brings their own perspective and ideas, and it's great. And then, you know, the builders that we're working with, fantastic as well. So yeah, you need, that's why I'd say just let go a bit earlier.
And what is success to you now?
Balance. So, spending time with family and working on projects where people are invested and they love to go on a journey with you. So having people that are open to new ideas and ways of doing things, and that's not just the client, that's the builders as well. And just going on that journey and finding out what we're going to do, being a bit more playful, you know, just calm the farm. Everyone just there's a lot of money involved, but that doesn't mean it can't be a fun process, and you don't end up with something magical. So
yeah,
that's a really important aspect.
Do you think that when you look back as well on your career and everything like that and on life, do you think that we tend to take life a bit too seriously?
Yeah, no question. You know, part of that letting go for me is not being such an idiot. You know, I was probably the guy with the black polo neck, taking myself very seriously. But it's, I mean, if you can get past that, because we're all professionals, we're all very good at what we do, and if you're having fun doing it, that's not wrong. You're not doing a bad job. You're just enjoying it. And, you know, kids will teach you that, the way that they behave, because they're awesome. And adults become these strange things that, hide and aren't completely transparent. And whereas kids will say what they mean and they'll do what they like. And that's, you know, if we can maintain that for as long as possible, do a great job, enjoy what we do, then that's it. Yeah.
It's kind of like a shame, really, if you think about it now. I'm just thinking about it now. Like if you look at architects, and my wife's one, so I'm not speaking sort of against them, but graduate. But architects, you know, if you look back at them, they tend to have been the creative kids and the kid that used to, like, you know, do all the creative and fun stuff and not get into so caught up in all the serious stuff. They used to do more the fun stuff, and then you get into design, and then eventually it becomes more of like a pompous, you know, like when you're right at the top and you have your black clothes on and you're very serious. And you know, I've been at some of these like networking events and talked to some architects, and I'm just like, oh, you know, it's kind of a pity, really, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But I think there's also, you know, architects, with everything, there's a massive range, and there's also what you want to do. You know, you could love administration, you could love contracts, you could love detailing bathrooms, you could love the way that the practice works, practice management. There's
a lot to it.
Yeah, and those are all abhorrent words to me. And I love design, I love dealing with people. I love helping people, and that's my jam, and that's what I want to do. But my wife, when I met her, she didn't know what an architect was, and that was so refreshing because, again, you're just taught at university. It's very serious. This is the greatest role you could do. This, affects everybody. What the hell are you thinking? Read this book. It's very thick, very important, and it's glorious just chatting to people that don't care, and it's good.
I think that's I think you can extrapolate that to anything really, not just architecture. So if money and status was no object, how would you spend your time? Designing?
Yeah, I would definitely design, and I'd probably do a bit more art, and
I always like to ask this as well. If you were less afraid of other people's opinions, what would you talk about more?
Well, amongst friends, probably I don't have that issue. Talk about anything, but in public, no, don't know. I think, so as I mentioned, I've just been overseas, and one of the things you have to do is try and speak another language. Now, you have to be willing to look like an idiot when you try and speak another language and be very bad at something. So I suppose what I would do is I'd speak to people about things that I had, I needed to learn and were very bad at, and go from there. Because that's such a cool thing, if you go back and be happy with being uncomfortable about that scenario, and then, you go through that. Because you don't often get that these days. You sort of, you know what you do, and you're getting.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like not. Yeah, I read a quote the other day that said something like, "If not wanting to look like an idiot is holding you back."
Yes. Yeah.
Having that, being open to being like, "Hey, this is a dumb question," but
absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, we've pretty much come to the end. Like that's. Time's gone pretty fast, right? Do you even know what you said, John?
Something about robust honesty of material.
Yeah.
Negative detail. Like negative detail.
Let me ask you this. So what in terms of failure, and then I'll kind of go into a rapid fire, but what role has failure played in your life and in your business, and how important is it to fail to be able to succeed?
That's exactly what we've just been talking about, being bad at something and getting better and better. You have to open yourself up to that, and you can failure is everything. If you want to be good at something, you have to fail at it, and practice and practice and practice. So that's huge, and that's in every sense of what you do within your business and how you deal with people. So it's huge.
Yeah. And what would be your last sort of piece of advice, if you could give that, to builders out there that are looking to get more into that architectural space? They've done a lot. They've done a lot of the cool like renovation stuff. They've done maybe a couple of new builds. They want to get more into that architectural space. Like what sort of one piece of advice you can give them, or something they can work on, or a better way they could maybe reach out to architects, or anything like that?
Just start wearing black turtlenecks. No, what I would suggest is being open to a journey, a thought process that's not always, if you've done something a certain way, that's fantastic and you'll be very good at that, but be open to do something potentially a different way that is going to get to the same result. It's just going to be a collaboration to get there. I think that would be worthwhile. When we create our documentation sets, we don't see them as the thing to follow to the nth degree. It's an intent of what the project's about, and that needs as much collaboration from the builder as the client as from us. So that's a really important aspect as well. And it's not about finding problems. It's about finding solutions and how that's gonna play out. But
yeah,
I mean, builders know what they're doing. they're bloody good at what they do, and they should respect their time. And I feel as if it's like with anything, if you want something bad enough, you'll slowly put your mind onto that, and your whole way of doing things becomes that. And it sort of slowly, nothing's overnight, but it slowly comes to fruition. Yeah.
No, I think that's really good. That's it. Let me run through these rapid fire questions, and I'll let you go, John.
Okay.
This has been real fun. I've been really enjoying this, actually. Been asking my wife what questions I should ask. She didn't really give me anything, so to come up with all these questions myself, Okay, so how big is your team, John?
We have 4 in the office, but we probably are around 12 people now. So we're one of our guys is based in Venezuela, and
nice.
I live vicariously through him. He surfs and does architecture, and it's nuts. And so he sends me these photos of it's pretty awesome. But
that's cool. What is your team structure? So you kind of answered a little bit of that, but do you have what's your sort of registered versus unregistered?
I'm registered, and we have a few registered within the practice, and then we have designers and graduates and all sorts.
Cool. How many projects did you complete last year?
Complete as in built on site, or just
drawn? Yeah,
we worked on probably too many last year. We were around 39.
Wow.
This year we're sort of around 24.
What do you charge for your average project? Is it percentage? Is it an hourly or fixed cost? How does it work?
We provide our clients with an estimation of our time, and then it's almost an hourly rate to that point. If anything changes, we just let them know. But typically that estimation becomes a fixed fee as we work through it. We've always been told you've got to do a percentage. You're crazy not to. For me, if I was going into something and someone said that to me, I probably wouldn't feel great about it. So I think it's always nice to provide that surety to people, and that's how we do it.
Cool. Should a QS or builder be pricing your projects?
Well, preferably a builder who's a QS. But builders know the market at the time. They know how much they're going to cost to build it. So I think they have value. An independent QS has value as well, because they have this cross field knowledge, and it's if you find a good QS, that's cool. That works well. But builders are fantastic at what they
cool.
how they price.
You prefer builders use project management software or spreadsheets?
Well, from what I understand, the project management software can be so expensive. So I would prefer they use whatever works for them, and I just putting the money into the outcome. Systems are great, but only a system that works for you. You can get the best project management software and not use it. So
100%. Fixed price contract or charge up?
Everyone likes the surety of a fixed price, but I've done my own renovations and alterations, and you just know that there are things that you can't foresee. There are always going to be unforeseen issues. So there's got to be maybe a balance. Maybe it's a discussion with the client, how they're feeling, how comfortable. Last year you saw materials go up about 25%. So I'm not sure. You can have those cost fluctuations in the contract, but very hard to actually get. It's a roller coaster, the one-off roller coaster of our industry. It's nuts. So that's a tough one.
NZIA, master builder or certified builder contract?
The simplest one.
Good answer. You should be a politician. Texting or talking on the phone?
Woo! This is awesome. I love this question.
Or voice memos?
So, architects, from what I understand, builders, they're on the phone, love it, love the phone. And phone's great. However, architects crap on the phone. Well, I'm crap on the phone because if I'm in something and if I get a call, if I break that, I have to, it's an hour, half an hour before I can get back into it. So what might seem like a really short time on the phone for someone needing information just becomes a nightmare for me. And And inevitably, I'll be emailing afterwards as well, just to follow that up. So for me, emails are great. Texts are okay, but it's the same sort of scenario. So yeah, email, none of the above. Yeah.
Email, and then also that's documented,
Yeah.
variations, all that sort of stuff. EV or petrol head?
Oh, you can't go petrol head. It's got to be EV these days, isn't it? Jeepers.
You're the first person ever to do this to us. Okay. Would you rather have a beer with a town planner, a builder, an engineer, or council member?
Probably a council member. So things could go really well.
You're thinking.
Yeah.
Jock or hippie?
Hippie.
Wine or whiskey?
Both.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
These days, builders are A, professional, B, problem solvers, C, unorganised.
A and B.
Are you too mean or too nice to your staff, John?
Probably both at different times, but hopefully, probably. I don't think I'm too nice. No, but yeah, maybe too nice sometimes.
What's your most used emoji?
The thumbs up and the cheers.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Favorite business or non-business book?
It's the guy from MIT who drew. He shows you how to run a business, but he does it in sketch form. So it's lovely. I can't remember the name of it. Non-business book. I love a good children's book. Probably Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh yeah, that's a goodie. What's one item you can't live without?
Probably a pen.
That's it. Did you have fun?
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that went really quick. I really enjoyed that, actually. We've been meaning to get an architect on for a while, but I think we've picked the perfect one to just have a good yarn with. So thanks for coming on. Really had fun.
Thank you.